Hi, this is Anilamation. In this tutorial, I'll show how to use Nuke's timeline in an extended editing mode, where you can put together a sequence of shots or compositions in a desired rendition. We'll see how we can use frame range and append clip, and how to play sound through flipbook or write node. Now, when we want to put together a sequence of shots, we most likely would want to have certain frame range per each of those clips defined beforehand. Let's see how we can do this. The first footage you bring inside your Nuke file is going to be the one that is going to define the number of frames that you see in the timeline. In my case, the first clip I brought in was this logo animation. If I double click, I see that the frame range is from 1 to 84, and that's the timeline I'm seeing right now. Next, I brought in these two video files, but still my timeline didn't change. Now this is certain when you have the preview at the global mode. If we want to work with clips that we want to sequence them in the timeline in an orderly manner, we want to choose this other mode, which is right under the global one. When you do this, the timeline changes to accommodate whatever footage you are viewing at the moment. Right now I'm viewing this footage, but if I move the viewer to this other one, the timeline changes to this other number, 740. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is drop in frame ranges. So I can click tab and drop in a frame range for this one, and then here another one. Now the frame range node is very simple. It just have two little windows for the first frame and the last frame you want to view in the viewer. For example, for this clip that I'm viewing, I want to view from 110 to, let's say, 240. So in the frame range I'll type 110 to 240. Okay, and the timeline adjusts to this frame range. I'll go to the other clip. I want to view, let's say, from 100 to 150. So 100 and 150. I'm not going to put a frame range for this first logo animation because I am going to use the whole time. Next, I'll bring in the append clip node. Append clip can take many inputs. Okay, right now I have input 1, connect with an input 2 to the next clip that I want to show in the timeline. Now, when I appended clip, again I'm going back, the timeline changed from 84 that I'm seeing right now. When I connect this to 135, it added these 50 frames that I have defined for the second clip on top of the 84, which makes a number of 135. If I would like to, I can bring in another branch from this append clip to connect to my next media file. And notice how the timeline changes to include also the frame range of this footage. Now, sometimes you want to do this, but most of the time you don't. And the reason why is because you want to be able to access the most out of the append clip properties for all your media files. These are properties that we see all the time on editing applications, like transition of fade in, fade out, cross dissolve. Let's say I want to fade in along the first 30 frames. I can put a number 30 here. And if I go and play the clip, I can see that I have a fade in. I can have a cross dissolve of, let's say, 30 frames. And if I bring my time indicator somewhere around here, you can see there is a cross dissolve. I'll bring this down to 20 frames. 10 frames before and after would be good enough. Next, I'll bring in another append clip node for connecting it to the other footage. And let's place 20 frames of cross dissolve And notice the timeline expanded to 226. And if we play the footage around 100, we can see we get this cross dissolve. Another thing I could do is I could drop more than one frame range in one footage. Let's say I'd like to use two different portions of the same footage and I'd like to place them in a different place in the sequence. So for example, with this footage selected, I can click Tab, bring in frame range, hold down Shift, and another frame range it will appear. Let's say I want to play from 200 to 250. Next, I'll bring in my last append clip, connect it to this last frame range, and fade it out 20 frames. And let's play the whole sequence. We have the logo animation faded in, cross dissolve, another cross dissolve. We have a cut and then fade out. Okay, so now let's say I want to bring in some sound. You can load audio files into Nuke using the audio read nodes in much the same way as you read an image with the read node. You can read an uncompressed WAV and AIFF file and flipbook them with your footage for playback. So we can bring in the audio read node. It's right under the audio section. We can go to the file and let's say I want to bring this jungle sound. If I want to hear audio, I need to use a flipbook renderer. So here I have all these settings that I can define. Let's say I want to go up to frame 60 and I will tell it that the audio should be reading this read one node and click OK. And here is the sound. Finally, let's bring in a write node to see how we can render out sound with the write node. I simply clicked W for a write node, and the first thing you want to do is to name the file and to choose the location where it's going to be saved. Let's say I want to call this my film. I want to output a QuickTime movie, so I have to click .mov, and then I will save this. So here now I just defined the file name of my render that is going to be written out from this write node. We can change the codec, like in this case I'd go and choose the H.264. We need to make sure that the frame rates are matching with our clips, and we shouldn't forget the audio file. Select my sound file, and finally I can go ahead and render, where I can choose the number of frames that I want to render and click OK. Once the render is done, I would be able to hear sound on my output file. Okay, so this is it. In this tutorial, we had a quick look on how to use Nuke's timeline in an extended editing mode, where you can put together a sequence of shots or compositions. Further, we saw how to play sound with flipbook playback or a write node.